And we are live. Welcome back to the Digital Creators Podcast. In this episode, we have Grace Lam as our guest. Welcome, Grace.
Hello, Harry.
So, Grace Lam is one of Asia's most prominent editors and stylists, and after 26 years in the styling industry, she is now based in Perth and continues her work from here. Grace was born in Hong Kong, but lived in London for most of her life. She graduated with first-class honours in graphic design and joined ID magazine as a fashion assistant to Edward Enninful, who is currently the editor-in-chief at British Vogue. In 2005, she was part of the launch team behind Vogue China, where she was the senior fashion style editor until 2014. She worked with industry greats including Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell, Gisele Bundchen, Maggie Cheung from Wong Kar Wai's In the Mood for Love, John Woo, Mario Testino, Annie Leibovitz, Lana Del Rey, and F1 driver Fernando Alonso. Her work has appeared in Vogue Italia, Vogue Japan, Architectural Digest, V Magazine, and Tatler. Her clients include Dior, Burberry, Calvin Klein, Mandarin Hotels, Dyson, Huawei, and Adidas, to name a few. She relocated to Perth in 2020 with her photographer husband, Jason Capobianco, and their son. In this episode, we're going to talk about Grace's background, her work as an international stylist, whether it's possible to work with big clients as a Perth creative and why, stories from working with the industry's greats, where Australia stands in the fashion industry, and more. Wow, what what an intro there. That's like, I mean, you've had such like an incredible career so far. Can you sort of take us back to where it sort of started in Hong Kong and growing up? Were you kind of like a creative child and that sort of thing?
So when I was growing up in Hong Kong, I'm the youngest of four girls. I have a twin sister. And my two elder sisters, my dad is an accountant. My mom is like a lady of leisure. And my elder sisters, the two elder ones, they're like, one is an accountant lawyer and then the other one is in business. So when it came to me and my twin sister, we're definitely more creative, the creative bunch out of the whole family. So my twin sister is an architect, and I did graphic design in Central St. Martin's, but I went down the fashion path after that. I was always creative and I liked clothes when I was young, but I never thought I was going to go into fashion because I just wasn't. It was never like a die-hard fashion person, but I just like clothes because my mom is a very stylish woman.
Yeah.
So she had a lot of influence on us because she dressed it so well, and she's colorblind. But she can put clothes really well together, and I think she had a lot of influence on me when I was younger. But not until when I went to England for UK boarding school, then I was in an all-girls school, so obviously girls talk about clothes and fashion and supermodels. And
yeah.
So that's when I started like reading like Vogues and Elle, Marie Claire, all those magazines. And then, I took an interest, but whether I was die-hard fashion person, I was not. Yeah.
Was fashion more of a popular thing in London compared to Hong Kong?
London is a hub of creativity, and full of creative people. And just full of cool people, So if you go down to Carnaby Street or Camden, you can always find like very alternative looking people, right? And that's what I love about London, is so diverse, and you can just meet people quite easily.
Yeah.
Because I spent most of my life in London, so I had a really good group of friends there. And most of them are creative people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And you worked at ID magazine as well. That was kind of your main your first job over in London.
Yeah. So I did graphic design at St. Martin's, and then end of my second year, the founder of ID, Terry Jones, came to give us a talk about graphic design, about ID. And of course I was reading ID at that point as well, right? And then he came for a talk, and then I kind of stayed behind and I had loads of questions to ask him. And then he said to me, "Oh, you look like you dress really well. Do you want to become a stylist?" I was like,
Wow, you just said that just right off the bat. Wow,
yeah,
that's
I was
amazing.
like, what's that? You know, what do they do? What does stylists do? You know, he was like, well, why don't you come and intern for us? So that's when I started interning for them. And you know, to do internship in a magazine, you're basically at the bottom of the ladder, right? You have to do everything. You know, get the coffee, return all the clothes. You know, it's not very glamorous, and there's a lot of work for not getting paid. You know, so it was. I did that during my last year, and then after I graduated, he offered me a job to be his PA. But at that point, you know, I didn't want to be his PA. I was like, I'm not a secretary. I'm a creative person, you know. But in hindsight, I should have taken it, and it would be like a really great way to start my career. But I didn't, and then I went away and I assisted other stylists, and then I went back to ID to do more internship, and I met Edward Enninful. And then when his assistant left, he called me and said, hey, you come for an interview. And then I got the job straight away. And then let's say I got a job on Monday, and then like Wednesday or Thursday, he flew me to Milan and we did the Jill Sanders show. I was like, it was kind of crazy, because at that point I did maybe 2 shows in London as an assistant. But to do something like in like such bigger scale, I was like, oh, this is crazy, man.
Yeah, especially quite early on in your career.
Yeah,
it's like quite amazing.
Yeah. So it was super scary, because it's quite intense doing fashion shows. I mean, for what, like a less than 10-minute show, it takes a lot of work. People don't even know, you know, from like casting to styling. You know, you have to pick thousands of clothes for like, you know, 30, 40 outfits, and casting models, and how to talk to models, how to do Polaroids, I mean, it sounds very easy, but actually there's a lot of organization. That's why I'm such an organized person now, from all those training.
Yeah.
Anally organized. Yeah. Because you have to be. Yeah. You know, if you miss one look that's supposed to go with like, you know, like a blue shirt instead of a red one, then you're in trouble, you know? For sure. Because it's all about sales. Yeah. And by then, you know, people are going to order from the whole collection. You know, that determines how well the collection will sell. So.
For sure. And I guess London's quite a small city in a way. Did you find it like just really beneficial, sort of being surrounded by, you know, sort of greats in the industry? I suppose they're not. Was it kind of difficult to make it into that scene, or just you kind of had to have the right mindset of like networking and putting yourself out there?
I mean, you do, of course you do. You know, it's like in any industry, right? But at the same time, maybe because I didn't plan anything. That's why I didn't have expectations, I think, to get into fashion. And when I got in, it wasn't easy, but it wasn't like super difficult either. I mean, I did a lot of internship. I assisted quite a lot of different magazines, and, you know, I assisted other magazines, like, what was it, Marie Claire, or for a few months, and just to meet different people. It's a very it's all about connections. And I think when Edward Enninful called me for an interview, after I started assisting him, everything just went off. You know? Yeah.
Did you find you just had to kind of get your foot in the door in that sort of scene, and then from that it kind of was like a snowball effect?
Yeah. But also, I mean, it depends what kind of person you are, right? You know, if you party a lot, of course you're gonna meet people that you want to party with, and you might be able to help you. I didn't really do stuff like that. Maybe I should have, I don't know. But I don't know, everyone has a different way, but my way was I just wanted to enjoy my job and just meet and work with nice people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And be maybe surrounded by creative, like-minded people, yeah. What gave you the confidence to make that move to London?
Because I was already, because I went to high school in London, in UK, so my boarding school was just an hour from London. So I knew London pretty well. And my twin sister started architecture school at the Architecture Association. So she already started studying there. And I was like, oh, you know, after I came back from Paris, I went to Paris when I was 18 for a year, or less than a year, trying to learn French. And then after that, I went back to UK, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then my mom was like, oh, all my friends' kids are doing like hotel management. Why don't you try that? And then I was like, okay, I'll try it, you know. And I did it for like 5-6 months and I hated it. It's really hard work. I mean, hats off to anybody who works in the hotel business. It's very hard work. And then after that, I applied to Chelsea College of Art for a foundation course, and I got in. And then from then, I applied for St. Martin's, and I got in. And I think that was a really good foundation because I'm not really into fashion design.
Yep.
I can't sew, I can't draw very well. So to go in from graphic design side, I think it gives another dimension to creativity. So I'm not just purely about fashion design. I think that's quite good. It's a good combination. So when I went into publishing magazines, it helps to, you know, give a voice to like layout or an opinion, what I would like my layout to be and all that. So that really helped, I think.
So you went from doing graphic design to doing publishing work at ID. Were you doing graphic design work at ID as well?
No, I was. I helped the art department at the beginning. The very basic stuff like scanning and all that, and scan the countless of pictures and then trying to organize the limited edition like book that they had. So I helped out with the art department, but I wasn't very good at computer. I wasn't very good at it. So so then I jumped to the fashion department, and then which is more my thing. So
okay.
I would, you know, assist on fashion shoots and just doing all that. And then so by the time
they kind of choose you for that because they kind of noticed you had style and you would like, how did they kind of see you had a talent in styling?
ID is a very small office. It was because at that point they bought they I think Time Out owned them at that point. So the office was on Tottenham Court Road, and the team is quite small actually. We had a lot of freelancers, so I was just an assistant there, just doing whatever needs to be done. And so and then they started giving me like very small shoots, like, you know, like a product shop to style, you know. So they're quite good at like giving opportunities to young people. But then obviously after a while, when there were no full-time position, I just started assisting other stylists in other magazines. So I did that for a few months, and then Edward called me, and then I just went full-time with him.
Okay, and I guess you were his assistant, so what type of work were you doing?
Oh, everything. I was like his PA, his everything, you know. I had to do everything. So that's why I'm so organized now. But there were two of us. So it kind of helps with the workload. So from doing anything from like calling in, so he would give us the brief of the shoot that we're going to do for Italian Vogue or for ID. I want this brand. So back then there were no, we were doing emails, but a lot of the PR companies, they were doing faxes as well.
Yeah.
So you have to fax your request over.
So like admin work and like
admin and if you want a coffee, you have to go and get it. If you want some lunch takeaway, I have to go and get it, or the other assistant. You know, it's everything basically. So you're basically like his PA and fashion assistant. And
were you doing any styling at that point?
Not the first year. So I was with him for a couple of years. Not at the beginning. So basically, we were calling all the clothes, and then obviously on the shoot, you have to get there earlier than he would, and then you have to lay everything out, make sure everything's organized, and yeah, just in charge of the whole production before Edward gets there. Once he's there, he'll do his magic and he'll style clothes, and then you make sure that what he picked is what's going to appear on the model. And yeah, and I mean, it was a great journey with him because I learned a lot from him because he was so good at what he was doing.
Yeah.
And because he's such a great character, and when he's on set, he's always, happy, loud and fun, and everyone has a great time shooting.
So as much as it was like a very fast-paced environment, it was also like maybe a fun environment working with different creators as well.
Yeah. I mean, most of the people that he worked with, they were like heavyweights, like Testino, Craig McDean, Paolo Reversi. These are the people that I read in a magazine. And then when I met them, I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy, But yeah, there were, it was a really good experience, looking back, but it was hard work. I can't lie. Like sometimes I remember, especially when I was doing, Milan fashion shows, I would get quite jaded because here I am, a little Chinese assistant on set, and then all these models comes in and they earn like thousands and thousands of dollars, and you're like, wow, I just spent like 14 hours working, and what do I get, And then the insecure side kind of kicks in and go, oh, I wish I was taller, I wish I looked like this, so I can be a model as well. And all that just pops in when you're that age, when they're young, and you're like, why are they getting paid so much and I'm just here just like ironing clothes. I think that is one part of the fashion industry that makes people kind of very insecure if you don't have the right mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, for models, it's even worse. I was just a fashion assistant, and sometimes I will think like that, and other times I'm like, oh, I can't think of anything worse. Just have to go naked in front of people and all that and stuff. But being a model is very. I mean, as much as it looks easy, I think the mental side of it gets you every time. I don't know. Throughout all these years, I've met loads of even really big models. They will, you can see that they get also very insecure when it comes to casting. And I had one person that came up to us when we were doing the show that she wasn't picked, and she was so famous already. And she basically was very teary. And then she was like, how come you didn't take a Polaroid of me? Is it me? Is it? I'm like, wow, this girl is so famous, and she's even acting like that, So that kind of side, I was like, wow, it's not healthy. To make girls to feel that way is just not right. But, I hope by now that, this has changed.
Yeah, I guess more of a direct question on that. What do you, in your opinion, what are the pros and the cons of the fashion industry, the fashion world?
The pros and cons. It's always great fun, and you meet all these fun and creative people. It's a fun job. Basically, I can't think of any other jobs. Probably in the film industry, maybe you meet a lot of creative people that's kind of similar. It's a super fun job, and it's always changing. There's always new people coming in and out, and everybody loves fashion design or clothes, right? So so that part is really good. And the cons is, I think, because fashion moves in such a fast pace, I don't think it's good for the environment. The amount of clothes that the fashion industry produce, it's one of the biggest pollution, for the planet. I think it's the second biggest. A lot of designers are doing their part. A lot of brands are doing their part, but at the same time, it's going to take such a long time because there's always demand of new pieces, new collections. That's why it's still carrying on, The cons, I guess, probably body image as well, to make people, especially women, think that, oh, when you get to a certain age, you should be this fit, you should be having a six-pack when you're still 60, or all these, I just don't think is realistic. Not everyone can have a really strong mindset. If you're like 16 and you get told time after time, oh, you're not good enough to walk this show, that's going to affect you a lot.
Yeah, I think just like you were saying, as much as there's like the glitz and the glamour of the fashion world and the fashion industry, and like a lot of models see that and they're like, wow, that's amazing, I want to do that, I want to be that. There's like the other side to it. There's like the kind of can make you feel quite insecure. You're comparing yourself to other people. You're kind of meeting the demands of these agencies or magazines or photographers, and I guess it's not as easy as you might think. Yeah,
and I also feel it's the safety of especially for models or for anybody. This is it for every industry, right? It's the safety of people, whether you're a guy or girl, for people who are in higher places, maybe they abuse their power, and how to protect each other. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think especially if you're dealing with all these high level people, and you'll be like, wow, this person is kind of can put you in a vulnerable situation, I think. Yeah. And also, in regards to the impact on the environment, I think, there's like two sides to this fashion world. I see there's like the sort of trends. For example, you might see this trend and you want to buy that piece of clothing and you want to kind of look like the current trend. And then there's like actual style, which is like knowing yourself, knowing what fabrics suit you and who you are. Then you're not sort of like following the trend. And I think now with social media, like TikTok or whatever, like people are seeing those trends. Like every day there's a new trend, there's a new shoe, there's a new this and that, and that makes them kind of purchase like the newest thing. Whereas in reality, if they wanted to kind of have a sense of style, they would they're kind of better off knowing themselves and discovering themselves.
Which is hard when you're young, when you're like me, 40 something. Of course you can, stop those temptations, right? But if you are like 14, 15 and you see your mates having the latest, like, Adidas, and of course you kind of want that, I think it's the message. I think the new generation, they're quite smart. They're very smart, compared to when I was that age, So I think it's definitely changing. But on another side of the sustainability, a lot of designers would say to you, or editors would say, spend more money, buy better quality so it will last longer, which is also very true. But I don't think most people can afford that kind of price, So it's a difficult one, I think. If you ask people not to buy fast fashion, it's very easy to say, but when you have low income and you do want to buy your kids some new clothes, and where are you going to go? Of course you're going to go to like Kmart. You're not going to go to like, Baby Dior, are you? So it's unrealistic to say that. I mean, to buy very expensive clothes, there's only like maybe, I don't know, 10% of the world population probably can do that. So most people need to buy fast fashion with, and they don't have a choice. I mean, I like to buy, long-lasting clothing as well, and I really like vintage clothing. So when I lived in London, half of my wardrobe was like all from Portobello or like secondhand shop or vintage shops. But when I moved to Hong Kong from London, I realized that back then it wasn't very popular, and then there weren't many like vintage shops in Hong Kong. There were like a few compared to London, and then people just kind of like this vintage clothing. They were like, oh, dead people wore it and all that, especially you're Chinese. My mom would say to me, why are you wearing that? Someone died in it. I'm like, Ma, it's cool because it's cool, Yeah. So it's hard to convince people, I think, but for the past maybe 5 years or 3 years, it's been really popular with the whole, rebuy, resell, and wear secondhand, which is great to see. I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah, 100%. Even you have these apps with like you can sell second clothing like Depop or Grailed or that sort of thing. Do you think it's possible for someone to find their style without going through so many clothes? Because like when you're finding your style, you're like trying this type of clothing, going out wearing this, buying like another thing. And that kind of has that impact on the environment because you're buying so many things. Is it possible to find your style without doing that? I guess you kind of have to go through that phase of buying and trying lots of different things.
Yeah. I think everyone has their own style for sure. But I mean, I've kept some of many things I've bought from like H&M or Zara because I still really like them. They're like more than 10 years old, So I think, yes, we shouldn't buy fast fashion labels. But at the same time, if you do decide to buy it, try and buy something you really, really like and you can keep longer, Make sure you take care of your wardrobe, and even fast fashion can last for a long time. So before I left Hong Kong in 2019, prior to that, maybe 3 years prior to that, I kind of start losing interest in luxury fashion, and I start feeling guilty about everything I buy. Or I did a lot of personal styling sessions with a lot of luxury brands in Hong Kong, and I kind of felt bad telling people to buy things that they didn't need. So then one day I woke up, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna like cut out that side of my business, and that's it. You know, I'm gonna stop telling people what to buy, or stop telling people to buy shit that they don't need, basically. Yeah.
And I suppose that might have had like an impact on your income in a way, because I would assume that you would have kind of influencers and maybe sponsors or people trying to say, hey, Grace, can you get people to, can you promote my brand here? And so you kind of had to stop doing that.
At that point I was very careful. I started being very careful who I collaborated with. And a lot of brands would say to me, oh, can you do like a VIP session again? And you're going to do this and that. And I started proposing ideas like, I'll only do it if you input something like, ask your customer to bring in their old style. I can revamp them. I can help them to style, or something that has been sitting in the wardrobe for like years but they don't know how to style it. I will combine that with new clothes that I will ask them to buy, but I want them to bring in their old clothes. No brands were interested. They just didn't. They're just not interested. They were just like, no, we just want them to buy new things. I was like, okay, then maybe you should find another stylist. You know, I mean, it was hard to say no because I was earning great money, but at the same time, I was like, this is not good for my son and his generation and the generation after. And so that made me think a lot about everything. I think that's when my mindset changed about fashion industry, and then I was not very excited about everything anymore. And I just I felt everything just kind of repeat itself, you know, trends, and they just keep regurgitating the same trend. And then the most hated questions I get asked is like, oh, what kind of trend is it this season? I'm like, it's always the same. You know, it's always like the same old thing, but they just change the name or change the color. Or I'm like, yeah, just go online and have a look. Don't ask me. I'm just not interested, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's when I thought, I need to change my career.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think as much as fashion is kind of, like, you can see the pros of it, having style is like finding yourself. It's what you wear. It's how you present yourself. It's how you express yourself. There's that other side to it, which, there's a lot of influence of brands like selling you things you don't need. There's like the hype around this sneaker or this bag or whatever. And I definitely haven't seen too much of that, like, or stylists, saying like, hey, let's use what you already have. Even though it might be like some clothes that they keep in a like drawer in the back of their house or whatever, like, let's bring that out and see if I can like style and work with that. I think that's like a really cool approach that I haven't really seen before.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are a lot more aware now, you know, even with magazines and a lot of social media has, you know, I'm pros and cons about social media. I'm not a huge fan. Of course, I use it. But one thing about social media is once you say something or trying to get a movement going, it spreads like wildfire, right? And then that helps a lot with this whole sustainable fashion. I don't want to call it trend, but because it's meant to be more long lasting. So I would say just, you know, use social media where it fits and trying to spread this message. But I mean, there are a lot of people a lot more aware compared to like 10 years ago, which is great.
Sure. That's why I think the op shop prices have gone up a little bit, because it's probably a good thing, because as much as on TikTok you see all the Shein hauls and whatever, you also see the thrift hauls and people like going out and like, you know, buying secondhand clothing and styling that, which is
and not ashamed to wear it or say it.
Yeah,
which is really important, you know. I think people just need to get over themselves and
I think Perth is pretty good with buying secondhand clothing. There's a lot of events recently, like big people running events in like warehouses, and people bring their secondhand clothes and they're like,
I went to that. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm really good at finding like bargains, and you can always spot something. I can go to a shittiest shop anywhere, and I can always find one thing that I like. I think you just have to train your eye, which I understand that not many people can. So that's when I come in and help people. I did a lot of styling, like personal styling with clients in Hong Kong, and I did a lot of pro bono work as well. It's the most fun thing. And I think after I decided not to do all those VIP styling sessions with brands, I went another way and just started doing more like personal shopping and styling, which I love doing because it's so much fun. I can straight away see how I'm going to change this person when in their head they can't see it.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting story, and then you get to meet a lot of people, and then they tell you go to the home. I'm always like, let me edit your wardrobe is my favorite thing to do.
Cool.
And it's just so much fun. So for me, I edit my wardrobe all the time. When we moved here, I kind of like gave a lot of stuff away or like trying to resell it. Now I kind of regret it sometimes because, when I get a reminder, I'm like, oh, I wish I kept that top or shoes or whatever and stuff, So yeah. So that's a really fun part of styling, doing personal styling.
For sure. Sort of a big, maybe broad question is, what do you think the difference is in kind of the fashion scene in the West compared to the East? So like the West being like Australia and the US compared to sort of the Asian fashion scene like Japan, South Korea, China. That sort of
I would say maybe 15 years ago, especially in China, is very different from what it is now. So when I moved to Shanghai from London, it was 2005. People were stylish, but they're not like completely out there yet. So they're not as experimental as now. But I guess because the China is a very wealthy country, and then there's a lot of people that travel outside of China. So they are more open to trying new things. And the styles now, they're super stylish and they're quite daring, the Chinese from mainland China. Hong Kong has always been very, forward because we're a small city and we were influenced by the British, obviously. So people in Hong Kong are always very stylish anyway. They're very aware of trends in fashion. So you could be walking down the street and then you look at this woman or a guy from the back and you're like, wow, this person is so young. And you turn around and it's like a 50 or 60-year-old woman, because they love their fashion in Hong Kong. Japan is always trendy, is always like on point, is always out there and very adventurous the way they do styling, and it's a very inspirational place. Other part of this, places like Indonesia and Malaysia, I'm not quite sure of the demographics, but Korea, all the pop culture now is just massive, isn't it? They're just like killing it, which is great to see. Yeah. I think the West, they've always been leading in the fashion scene. If you want to break into the fashion industry, I would say you definitely need to go to either New York, London, or Paris. No doubt.
Yep. Okay.
Because you will learn so fast. You get thrown in deep end, and that's when you can see whether you can swim or sink. That's it.
For sure. Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot to that question. I think in Japan, I feel like in Japan, like it's just been a part of their culture for so long that's why they're kind of known for their fashion sense there. And same with South Korea, like you walk out into the street, everybody's just dressed really well, compared to maybe it's quite different. I found here in Australia or in the US, like you go outside, people don't really have that much pride in the way they dress. It might be, I'm not sure if it's because of the working industry or what it is, but do you think that's why, I guess, people in the East take more pride in their fashion sense than over here in Australia, for example, because it has been a part of their culture?
I think people, especially here, I find that they love being casual, and I was actually quite surprised. The style here is very sporty. I think almost a lot of people are very into sports here, right? Or I'm always seeing people in like the yoga pants or the cycling shorts.
True,
crop top. I've never seen so many crop tops in my life in one place, It's definitely more sporty here, and when people dress up here, it's very it's not very creative. They look really nice, but it's not very creative. They're quite safe, I would say, very safe. So when I go out, when me and my husband go for a date night or something, when we go to a nice restaurant, I always see women beautifully dressed, but they're very safe. Whereas if you go in London or New York, people are a lot more daring, the way they dress. So yeah, there's no right or wrong. It's just how people being brought up or how they see fashion.
Yeah, for sure. I do feel like Perth is less of a creative city than like if you travel, to other places, Korea or Japan. Like I feel like Japan is a very creative city. If you look at their architecture, how the city's built, what people are wearing. There's also like a car scene over there, for example. Whereas here, maybe we're more of a working class city. I know we have a big influence from the mining industry, which fuels a lot of things. So maybe we don't really care so much about creativity. Even if you look at our architecture and our public art, it's not as creative as over east, for example.
No, I think we've only been here for 3 years, but what I've observed is, I think WA rely on so much on the mining business, but surely at some point when it phase out, you need to find another industry to support WA, right? And that's why I think we need to plan ahead to see what that is to support the States. And that's why my husband and I are starting this new project that we're working on. Is basically an art sculpture park that we would like to build in WA. So it's kind of like a Naoshima, but bring to WA. So Naoshima is a few islands in Japan where all the art park, sculpture park, or art installation are there, and every year they have like an art festival. It's a great place to visit, and it's so much fun, and we want to bring that to WA because tourism is important. And I think even when we first moved here, people were like, "Oh, are you moving to you?" Oh, we're like, "Oh, you moving to Australia? Oh, are you moving to Sydney or Melbourne?" I'm like, "No, Perth." First of all, they were like, "Where is that?" Second of all, they're like, "Why?" They don't. A lot of people don't know Perth, or they think Perth is really boring, and that's what I thought as well. And so when I first arrived here, I did so much homework: where to go and eat, where to go hang out, and I was so surprised that there's so many cool people and really cool places to hang out. So that's why I'm always trying to help on my Instagram to post whatever I can to help small businesses, because I want people to know that there are so many cool people and cool places in Perth. It's not what you think. And it's working because a lot of people from Hong Kong or like my London friends, they were like, "Oh, Perth seems really cool. Maybe we'll think about coming over one day, So that's what I want to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think Perth is really cool. It's just like knowing the places to go, knowing the people to meet and that sort of thing. But I can totally see why international people kind of look at Perth and they see it as this boring place, because we don't kind of showcase our culture enough. And I think that also has to do with our values as a state and a city, because my sort of opinion is our values are sort of influenced a lot from mining, because most people are kind of working class and they're kind of fly in, fly out workers, and that's great because they can fly out, make lots of money, come back, buy a house, buy like a big car, buy a jet ski, and then it's created sort of more of an individualistic culture. We kind of keep to ourselves, not really much of a community. So from that kind of culture, they're like, well, why do we need creativity in our city? Why should we invest in creativity and sculptures in art? But I think tourism is a big factor that people don't think of, because if you think of other people coming here, like what do we provide? People love culture. They love seeing art. They love seeing creativity. So I do think we need to like showcase that more, and maybe if the government could like get behind more creatives here and kind of showcase, just like you're kind of sharing what's cool here, if they like promote these things as well, there'll be more like of a benefit from the tourism industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think how we should promote Perth is, everyone knows how amazing all the outbacks, and we need to show more of the other side of Perth. Because most people say to me, I've got visitors coming, I think next year, and then they were like, oh, where are you going to take me? I'm always saying to my husband, oh, where can we take them? Apart from like Rottnest, Margaret River. So that's why we want to build this sculpture park, because we want people to have a destination, to go to. And yeah, let's make Perth, even better.
Yeah, that sculpture park sounds amazing. Can you like tell us even more sort of about that and the concepts and everything, and like what's it sort of gonna look like? And
so because I've been to Naoshima in Japan, and I kind of know, so basically in Naoshima you have to, it's quite a chore to get there. So you basically go to Japan, get on a train, get on another train. I think you have to take 2 ferries to get to this tiny island. On that island, there's only sculptures and art installations. There's nothing else. It's like a few restaurants and just a really cute, kind of like a small village, but you have to go island hopping to look at all these amazing like installation. So that's what we want to bring here.
So it's like the art that's kind of attracting people to this location, and then they want to see like another one, so they go here. Yeah, I think that's really exciting way to kind of navigate through a city or a place. Yeah.
So we just want to build it, even down south or north, east, west. So people will come here and just spend more time here, basically, rather than just come here and then just leave, or not even come to Perth at all and just go to the East Coast. And
what's your sort of approach to getting making this project happen? Is it gonna be like funded by government, or like how are you gonna go about that?
We had last year we started meeting a lot of people, and a lot of people think WA is ready for this, which is great. No one has said it's a bad idea yet. And we've met with the tourism board, and they love the idea. And I guess anything involved the government might take a long time to achieve. So we'll hopefully get some private funding and start from there. But we'll probably do like a satellite version first, and get an area, a suburb that is willing to jump in and just let us do whatever we want. And because once one area does a really good job and they're attracting more people to come, then the other area will get FOMO, right? And then hopefully then everyone will say, oh, we want to be part of this. And then it just snowballs. And then before we know it, WA will be so happening.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope that happens. Yes. I was just trying to find this article as well, because it kind of reflects, I guess, our values as a state. I'm not sure if you're aware of I think it's called Burrup Hub, or there's like some indigenous rock art like far north, and there's some woodside mining that's destroying it basically. Have you heard about that? Yeah. So that's what's happening. It's I think probably 50,000-year-old indigenous rock art that's the mining there is like affecting it. And my take on that is we should value like that rock art, because one, it's like indigenous, and it has, it's the art represents indigenous and the culture and their stories, which has been there for like, probably over 50,000 years. But then also, if the government, obviously the government wants to make money through like the mining and that sort of thing, but that's kind of like short term, that might run out. But if we think of the tourism industry, like it's amazing rock art out there. Like people will pay from around the world to like go up there. And I didn't even know about this rock art either. So I feel like the government, should just do more to kind of value creativity, value art, and it connects to the tourism industry as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether because of COVID that every single country lost a lot of money, that they panic and that they just want to have a quick fix of things.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, we have thousands of years old of history. Why would you want to destroy it? But not everyone thinks the same. And then I don't know. I just hope that at some point, WA will come up with something that is more long-lasting than what we have.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I just read the name of the rock art. It's Murujuga rock art.
Right.
Back to your sort of story. What was it like meeting these industry greats like Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell, and were you... I suppose this was that idea and you weren't so much styling for them, but you were kind of meeting them and managing shoots and that sort of thing. What was your kind of interactions with them? Because
I was working for Edward Enninful, that helped a lot. They were super nice to me. I mean, I met Kate in London. We were shooting. So I actually met Kate and Naomi at the same weekend. We were shooting in Paris with Paolo Roversi for a week for ID and Italian Vogue. And me and the other assistant, we were so tired after back-to-back shooting. Because it's a long day, because we're always the first one to get there, to arrange everything, and the last one to leave because you have to pack everything. And it's very tedious, I once returned ties, have to separate ties into different, ties of different brands and return it them. So then the courier can come and pick it up. I once returned had to separate ties. I think there were 2,000 ties in one night. Stuff like that.
Wow.
That's why sometimes I get so sick of clothes. That's
where it comes from. You're sick of seeing clothes.
I'm sick of seeing clothes. And I just I can't deal with it anymore. Kate was super cool, exactly how she is, normally. And Naomi, I met Naomi first on a Saturday, or let's say on a Friday, Saturday. She and I have been been talking on the phone for at least a week already before we even met. Because I was Edward's PA, he always say, "Oh, just call Grace for this and that." So we were already I remember once I was on the phone with Naomi, and then I bumped into a friend in London on the street. So I was talking to my friend, and then suddenly my phone rang, and it says Naomi Campbell, and my friend was just like, "Naomi Campbell's calling you! Oh my God!" And it was just so. Now when I think about it, it's quite surreal. So we were talking to her, and then by the time I met her, she has a presence for sure. When she walks into a room, right? And she came into Paolo Roversi's studio. I mean, of course, she and Edward are really good friends. She came in, and first thing she said was like, "Where is Grace?" And I thought I did something wrong. She gave me the biggest hug and said, "It was so nice to finally meet you." And I was like, "Oh, wow. The queen said that to me, the fashion queen, And she was just super cool, chill. I mean, sometimes when you meet people you've seen in magazines, you're kind of like, whoa, starstruck, but she was actually really normal, really easygoing, and she has a presence for sure. And we'll talk about Formula One because she was dating a F1 guy, and we'll talk about F1, and it was kind of surreal. And then when I met Kate Moss, at that point, me and the other assistant were so tired, shooting back to back, and then we took the Eurostar to Paris. We basically left a whole suitcase in Paris that we forgot because we were carrying 9 other bags already. And that bag has all the underwear, all the, clips, And then Ed was like, "Oh, give Kate a pair of G-string. We're going to do this, cover for ID." And then nothing. We had nothing. I almost had to take my own pants altogether.
Oh, really? Wow.
Well, I had one pair of clean knickers in my suitcase. It was from my own collection. So I gave it to Kate, and then and that was that. And then after the shoot, I said to the photo assistant, I'm like, "Do you guys want this pair that worn by me and Kate Moss?" In hindsight, I should have framed it.
Yeah, just sell on eBay.
They were super cool, and I mean, I wish I took pictures with them, but it wasn't. Social media wasn't big at that point, and I was just too embarrassed to do stuff like that. So it's a very different era, definitely. And so I met most of the supermodels I've met throughout this whole journey, and it's been great. I mean, my favorite supermodels when I was younger was Linda Evangelista, and she was so cool when I met her. And I met her in New York. We did a Japan Vogue cover together, and it's been a great journey for sure.
And photographers as well, Stephen Klein, Annie Leibovitz, Mara Testino. Were these all through ID as well? The connection with...
It was through Edward, yeah.
Edward, yeah.
Annie Leibovitz was with Vanity Fair. There's another start. So after I left Edward, I started freelancing, assisting other really big stylists as well. And because I assisted Edward Enninful, everybody was like, oh, when they go to London, they always ask me to assist them. So that Annie Leibovitz we were shooting Hugh Grant in Savoy Hotel in London for Vanity Fair. And I think who was the stylist? It was Bruce Pex, I think. That was crazy. That was a shoot when I had to return like 2,000 ties. I was sitting in Bruce's hotel room trying to sort out 2,000 ties. And yeah, it was a very, very long night. Yeah. And Annie is an amazing photographer, obviously. And her production, the way she shoots, is just like masterclass. Really nice lady as well. Stephen Klein, we went to the Hamptons in New York to shoot, and I remember the whole shoot was, I think we all stayed at his house, I think, if I remember correctly. The most memorable moments was when me and Edward arrived in his house, which is huge. We saw 2 horses came running towards us. I was like, whoa, that's really big horses. By the time it came out, it was his 2 Great Danes. They were massive. And me and Edward were quite scared. I like dogs, but when it's that big, I'm like, get a bit like nervous. But he was super good. I mean, I think because of Edward, I got like a special treatment. I mean, there were like, I've worked with some mean people as well, don't get me wrong. There are many in the fashion industry. You ask for pros and cons. The cons is like there are many mean people. There are many entitled people that they think that they're more important than they actually are. But I tend to steer right away from those people. Yeah. But when you have a title, it's very easy for people to try to be your friend, obviously. Yeah. I can see it very clearly. After I left ID and after I left Vogue, people change, and I guess that's for every industry, I'm sure. So you just have to adjust your mindset as well. So you need to have very good EQ to know how to handle those kind of relationships. And also, I think I would say to young people, you need to know how to read the room.
Yep.
When to say what, when to stop talking, when to give your 2 cents and stuff like that. Very important, sure. Which I think I learned a lot during this whole 20-something years. I've made a lot of mistakes as well, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, there are a lot of mean people in the fashion industry, which they can make you insecure. They can make you think a lot of different ways about yourself. But I thank every single one of them because I wouldn't become who I am today if it wasn't for them. Yeah,
for sure. I think, it's important. Well, what I would assume is important to kind of don't, when you meet these like celebrities or high level people, don't, put them in a pedestal too much, just like they're a person as well, they're human. And then maybe when you work your way up, you might be on this pedestal as well, like because you have this, work with so-and-so and maybe you have your own title, it might influence you to like treat others like below you a different way. But I guess it's just important to know yourself and just talking to another human.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think, there were many times that I was treated not in a nice way. That's what I've learned from my past, what not to do and what to do and all that. And so, I can't say that I've treated my assistant like, completely 100% with love either. Sometimes, when they do something wrong, I do scream and shout when I was younger. But as I got older, I learned how to speak to people in a different way, but still get the same result. I think these are all the things you need to learn as a human being, And I think one thing I've watched is when people are being mistreated, then they mistreat their assistants, and it just snowballs into forever, And I think I kind of caught that quite early on, and kind of checked myself. Oh, that was a bit too much, Grace. Don't do that again. After I've done it, maybe many times, and I'm sure if you ask my previous assistants, they were like, "Oh, Grace was really mean," but I know she doesn't mean it. It was just a moment when she was stressed, and so now when I think about it, but all my assistants become my really good friends now, and we're still friends, and we still talk a lot on WhatsApp. And I think when people look at me, they think, "Oh, she's such a bitch," or "She's this and that, and she's so fierce." And when they get to know me, they realize that, oh, she's a very loyal, and she's very black and white, and she's doesn't BS. And I think that's why I still have all my assistants are very good friends.
Yeah.
And then some of them are mothers now, and you create this really close knit of people that you want to work with. I think the past before I left Hong Kong, prior to that, 5 years prior to that, I only work with people that I really truly like. They might not be the best for that job, whether it's hairstylist or makeup, but because we get along so well, I much rather have that kind of vibe than just toxic people around me. Maybe they're great makeup artists, but they're just full of attitude and they want to be the center of attention and all that. I think you just need to surround your people by good people so to create good things.
Yeah, I think, that's what I found just as a photographer myself. Like when you like the people you working with, it just makes the whole job easy and fun. And I suppose when you're surrounding yourself with those people, you're going to have more jobs with your career. So if you want to live a life that you enjoy, just surrounding yourself with people that you like being around is just a really important thing. And after ID and London, you were part of the launch team behind Vogue China, which is huge.
Yeah. It was a time when my elder sister, we found out she had cancer. So it was a very difficult time in my life that I was still living in London when I found out that my big sister had cancer. And it was stage 4, which means that she wasn't going to live that long. And then I went back to Hong Kong for quite a few months, I think. But she passed away shortly after. And that's when Vogue China called me. And I think Edward called me, or he told the vice president about me. So they got in touch with me and said, "You have to come and work for us. We're launching Vogue China. You're the most qualified person we know." At that point, I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I've never been to China. I can't even speak Mandarin because I'm going to live and die in London. I'm a London girl, And then I was in Hong Kong when the editor-in-chief then called me for a meeting. And then she was like, "Oh, please think about it. We really want to have your input, and you have international experience." And I was like, "Okay, let me think about it." And then at that point, I didn't really want to, because I really want to live in London. But then I think I broke up with my boyfriend then anyway. I had no ties, and I was like, "Oh, why not? Let's give it a go." And I packed everything and moved. It was 2005, and I was told at that point in Shanghai, I came in the right time because everything was really modern and open up, and there was so many great things to do and nice places to go to, like cool expats and whatever. So it was a really good experience. I lived in Shanghai for 2 years, and then the whole team got transferred to Beijing. And then my editor-in-chief was like, "Oh, I don't think you really like Beijing. Just go to Hong Kong, based in the Hong Kong office, and you come to Beijing or Shanghai to shoot all the time." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I moved back to Hong Kong after 2 years, and then it was great, because I would go to China every month, or sometimes every other month, and then and I would fly around the world for like Fashion Week or good thing about the fashion industry, there's a lot of money throwing around. So they would invite editors to go and travel to Paris or, Greece or anywhere exotic just to have a fashion show. It's kind of surreal. I mean, I understand why people are attracted to the fashion industry because it's fun.
That lifestyle, yeah.
That lifestyle, you get on, business class here, first class there, and
celebrities and whatever.
Yeah, you get to interview celebrities, and I mean, it's amazing. I mean, because of the Vogue China job, that's how I met Fernando Alonso. I love Formula One, and when I met him, I couldn't believe it. I mean, he is by far, Lewis Hamilton is by far the most special person I've ever met throughout my whole career, for sure. Wow. Because he was so cool. I mean, anybody out there who's into Formula One, I just want to say Lewis is a really cool guy, despite what anyone else said about him. So he was super cool.
As much as you're into fashion as well, you're also into
I actually can talk about Formula One a lot more than fashion. Yeah. I wanted to get into Formula One first before fashion, and then Edward called me and changed my whole career.
And was it while you were at Vogue China that you worked with Maggie Cheung and John Woo?
Yes. So, yeah, those were like two major moments for me as well, because I grew up watching their films, John Woo was so nice and really like humble and really like quiet. So I did a photo shoot with him in China. I went to China for a day to shoot him. Maggie Cheung was like, whoa, this style icon of all times. And she was amazing, really friendly, not difficult at all. And yeah, it was kind of like a moment. And then after the shoot, she invited me to her home. I wish I went and hang out with Maggie Cheung, But yeah, super style. And she was very easygoing. And I prep a lot. I think one thing about being a stylist, you have to do your homework. I think when I first moved from London to China, I would do a shoot and I would call in everything under the sun. And back then, 2005, all the PR companies, all the luxury brand PRs were like, who is this Grace Lam calling all the clothes? And, is she doing a film? Or is it just a fashion shoot? But what I was used to when I was working with Edward, we would shoot like maybe 8 to 10 pages. So which means 8 to 10 outfits. Sometimes it's more. If there are more models, then more clothes. What I found when I first moved to Hong Kong and Shanghai, people would do a photo shoot of 6 outfits. They would call in 8 outfits. I was like, how are you going to have choice if it doesn't fit the model or if it doesn't look right? So I'm opposite. I call in like loads of clothes. So all the PRs were like, they weren't used to the way I worked, and then they realized, oh, she came from London, and this is how they do things, So they increase what we call the sample rack a lot more, because there are more demands. Because if one magazine has it, that means other magazines can't use it. So there's like a rotation, and of course, it's very hierarchy. If you're like Vogue, you're up there, and then there's like all the other rest, and if you're like an independent small magazine, I mean, forget about it,
Yeah.
So after all the Vogue and Elle and whatever after they've used it, then you have a chance.
And I suppose because at ID, you're more sort of the stylist assistant, and then when you went to Shanghai and Hong Kong for Vogue China, you're more of you were the chief.
I was a senior fashion editor.
Senior fashion editor. So you, when you were at ID, I guess you wouldn't have had much say or creative control in what's happening, but then in Shanghai you did. You could. Because
my strength, I'm not a writer. I can't write. So I'm a very visual person. So everything I did were all just shoots and interviews because I speak good English. So I will, my boss would send me out for like more important people like Stella McCartney or Rei Kawakubo, who designed Comme des Garçons. That was a moment. I was like, wow, I was so nervous interviewing her because she's so major. So I would get sent out to all these international designers because I speak good English. And when it comes to, you know, photo shoot, I would just do the styling and, you know, the art direction and sometimes the production and writing. I would, let's say if I interview Ray Kawakubo, and I would write in English and my team will translate in Chinese, and I can read it back, most of it, to see if they make any mistakes. Yeah.
And I saw you also did some styling for Lana Del Rey. Was that for Vogue China as well?
Yes. I met her in Singapore, and it was a Mulberry event that I flew out to attend this event, and then I shot her, and she was so cool. And because I was listening to her music a lot, and you know, we were just doing like singing together. She was super cool, like very easygoing, and yeah, beautiful woman. And her team were really nice to work with as well. So it was I've been quite lucky with my journey. Now I'm trying to face out all the horrible things that I experienced, you know, with horrible people and stuff, and just, you know, look forward to what I'm going to do next.
And how did the shots come out with Lana Del Rey?
I shot with a local photographer, a Singaporean photographer, and I think the problem with sometimes with photo shoots, especially with celebrities, they don't have a lot of time. So they will say, I'll give you an hour, and you just have to bang it out like 8 shots or 10 shots, which a real rush if that's including hair and makeup. Because most of the time are taken by hair and makeup artists because they need longer time. And we did it in the hotel room, which is not ideal. And then, we shot it, but we shot everything quite tight, so it doesn't show too much of the hotel. So sometimes, you know, you have this idea of the celebrities that you want for ages, and they can only give you like an hour, and then you're like, oh, okay, you know, and it's only in a hotel room, so what do? You just have to make the most out of it. Yeah,
I think just like when maybe you guys left the suitcase in Paris and you had to kind of style for what you had, and then you kind of had to do this shoot in the hotel. That's kind of where your creative abilities really come out. You have to work with what you've got.
For sure. You get thrown in a lot of like, you know, ad hoc stuff that you just have to deal with. Yeah.
Would you, like, for creatives who live in places like Perth, you know, we're quite isolated, but I know a lot of us want to work, you know, with big brands or people like this. Is it possible to work with big brands here in Perth, or would you say buy a ticket, go to London, go to Paris, go to New York?
I think it's hard to do creative business. It depends what it is, right? If you're doing like let's say a food business, yes, you can work from Perth. If you're doing styling, I think it's quite hard. I think most people will just leave Perth and go to the East Coast, which makes sense. But I think if you're going to make that move, you might as well try and save some money and go to places like London and go to where the hub is. Learn from them, get as much as you can out of them, because it's a different caliber, you know, even compared to the East Coast. And it's something that you can't learn from school, and unless you want to be a fashion designer, which you might need to learn the techniques, I say just, if you want to break into the fashion industry, definitely just go in and work in the industry rather than study. You know, I think studying like styling and all that I wouldn't recommend, because it's all about who you know and who you assist. Just find the person that you really love to assist and just hound them. So
are you saying like, because we've got maybe courses here at Curtin and TAFE and that sort of thing in the fashion industry, you're saying it's better to kind of, you know, you can learn yourself through other means like the internet or books or that, and then sort of it's better to try and connect with people in the industry and like try and be their assistant or try and bring them value and invest in that.
I always encourage young people to have an education for sure and take it seriously, because even if you want to do a styling course here, you'll definitely learn something from it, but I would just go straight to the industry and work instead, because what you've learned, fashion is, you know, unless you want to learn fashion design, styling is something that is all about feeling and about vision, and it's very visual. So you need to just go in and observe how people work on a shoot and how production works, how a makeup artist or hairstylist, how they work together with a stylist. And it's better be on set than learn from, there's no books to teach you that. Yeah.
Sure. And since moving to Perth, what sort of work have you been doing? What sort of work have you been enjoying? What sort of projects have you been sort of working on?
I'm quite picky about what I do now. I think having, done this for 26 years, the reason we moved to Perth because we left Hong Kong because of the Hong Kong ongoing protest. It wasn't safe anymore. We didn't feel safe anymore, and we have a young boy. So since we've been here, the first year and a half, I was just doing all the paperwork, trying to get all the documents going. And then I did a few consultancy work via Zoom when COVID hit. And it was a really good time for me to rethink of what I want to do, my next step, my next career, or my next move, because I know I don't have that kind of spark in fashion anymore. Actually, funny enough, Anna Wintour called me after I moved here, because I think I moved here a year.
Just casually, Anna Wintour.
Yeah, just casually, the big boss of Vogue. She got in touch with me because I knew my former boss was leaving Vogue China, the editor-in-chief, and I knew they were looking for people because I saw on Instagram that she said she was leaving. And then a day or 2 days later, my phone went nuts, and I think I was watching The Crown with my husband at night when my phone was going nuts. I didn't even look at it. By the time I picked up my phone, I had all these missed calls from London, Paris, and I was like, "Well, that's weird." And I had so many DMs, and it was Edward calling me, and then my friend who lives in Paris, she called me because she used to assist Edward as well. She was like, "Edward's looking for you. You have to call him right now." I'm like, "What is going on?" So I called him, and he was like, "Darling, Anna Wintour needs to talk to you. Can I give her your number?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, but what is going on?" And then he told me. So I guess they were looking for a replacement for an editor-in-chief position in a very early stage. And she Zoom called me, and I was like, "Oh," and then the lighting here, how you set up the lighting here, I made my husband set up exactly the same, so I look really good.
Oh, wow.
He was like, "Oh, why am I doing all this work when you don't even want this job?" I'm like, "Because it's Anna Wintour, And so she Zoom called me, and then we spoke about the editor-in-chief role, and then she was asking, what my plan, how long I'm going to stay in Australia, what's my plan, and from a minute I was like, "Oh, shall I take this job? That would be so powerful, and it'd be so great to have that title and all that and stuff." But I was like, not ready to leave Australia, and we're really happy in Perth. And I kind of put my ego aside. I mean, don't get me wrong. At one point I was like, "Oh my God, all those bitches and people that bitched about me, this is the best revenge." So that my ego came in for like 2 seconds. I was like, no. Think about this logically. How is it going to affect my whole family? My husband and my son, and we just got here a year ago. Do we really want to leave? I definitely don't think I want to bring up my son in China. So that was the first thing. And I spoke to my husband, we discussed it, and she was so cool. And I think because I came highly recommended by Edward Enninful and Jonathan Newhouse, who owns Condé Nast. She was super cool and super nice. First thing she asked me was like, "How are you? How's COVID? Are you okay?" I was like, "Oh, Anna Wintour's asking me if I'm okay." So the conversation, I said to Jason, I'm like, "Oh, this conversation is going to go for like 3 minutes." I know she's like in and out, very direct. It lasted for quite a while, and I was like, "Oh gosh," and because I knew I wasn't going to take this job, or I was going to say no, that I don't want to leave Australia. I didn't have that kind of pressure of impressing her. So it was a really good position to be in. And I think when you're older, like my age, when you know what you want and what you don't want, it's a great skill to have. If I was 29 or 39, maybe I would have said, "Yeah, sure, I'll move tomorrow." But I know it will stress me out so much to a point that I would not have a family life anymore. Something's got to give. I think it's great when people, especially mums, can juggle both. Now when I think about it, something has to give. You can't just be good at everything. You know, it's either your family or your child or your career is going to give. And it's very hard to find a work-life balance. And I think I can find it here. And now I just do projects that I like. So my husband and I shot the Karen Up campaign for during Christmas.
I saw that. That was amazing. Yeah.
So we worked with Ken Leung, who's a great creative director, who also, you know, you should interview him. He's a great.
I've sent him a DM.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll shoot him another one. Keep hounding him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in touch with him. I can put in a good word.
Oh yeah.
He's, you know, he just moved from New York back here, and I think we're at the time that there's so many cool creatives that are from Perth that came back here or decided to move to Perth for no apparent reason. I mean, maybe it's our time to shine, right?
Yeah, I was thinking that just from what I'm seeing, and just kind of maybe even over COVID, like I noticed that people were getting more connected just here in Perth because it didn't affect us too much. But yeah, I definitely think over time goes on, we'll definitely just keep building the scene here and see what happens.
I mean, I think, you know, by turning down that offer from Anna Wintour or even say no to that discussion, I was like, would I regret this when I, you know, next year or the year after? And so far I haven't, because I know sometimes when the timing is not right, it's better to say no. And I think I need to put my mental health and everything first before of my ego. And loads of people thought I was crazy for turning that job down or even not trying to push it to the next level. I was like, no, it's not what I want. You know, it might be something you want, but you're not getting a phone call though.
Yeah, for sure.
So most people thought I was crazy, but I was like, oh, it's so much better to say no.
Yeah, I feel like, I guess it just relates to where you are and your values, where you are in your life. And, you know, you were more maybe career focused before, you know, London, ID, Vogue, like styling for these high level people. And now I guess you're more sort of family oriented.
Yes.
And I think Perth is one of the best places in the world to really raise a family.
Yeah, it's great.
And you can still sort of do what you love.
Yeah.
Maybe not at an international scale necessarily, but it looks like you're still having fun on these projects. The Karen Up project looked really fun.
Yeah, and it was a great team, and who knows, you know, I might want to even do like, you know, short films, and I've always wanted to be a film director, but I was just too chicken to do it. You know, I was just too nervous and too scared. And I was like, oh, you know, but now I'm like, who's going to start a new career in film at this age? But I'm like, well, why not, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I've always thought as much as Perth maybe doesn't have these international things going on, it almost leaves a space for people to create these things, just like you and Jason want to, you know, make that park and like do that sort of thing. We can bring these things to Perth, make this sort of stuff happen in Perth. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, that's why we started, you know, meeting loads of people last year, and we will continue to this project. And I think I'm more interested in doing that rather than more fashion stuff. Maybe it depends what it is. If it's something that is meaningful, then I'm more willing to do it. But it has to be something that is just not, you know, like a simple idea of just to get more likes. You know, I'm just not really interested in that.
Yeah, 100%. Grace, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing to talk about you and hear about your whole career and just everything you've been doing. So yes, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been wicked, lovely to chat. Where can people find you or follow you and see what's happening? You can go to my Instagram, which is Gracelam Style, or my website, which is thegracelam.com. Awesome. I'll leave all the links in the show notes.